Welcome, folks, to another Diecast review. This time we're going to be taking a look at Brad Keselowski's 2010 Dodge Charger that he drove for Team Penske in what was technically, but not also technically, his rookie year, his first full-time year in the NASCAR Cup Series. A very good-looking diecast that I've had now for 12 years. Funny story about that. It was on clearance at the Team Penske hauler after the Michigan August race. Believe I got this for like $35, $40, and that was why I got it, because it was so cheap. And it was one of my first 124s that I had in my collection. It might actually be my first. That was at least an action diecast. I remember even, looking at it on the way home from the racetrack, being so excited. Little 10-year-old me was very, very happy to get this car, and this is one of the cars that I consider not a grail car for me, but one of my more important cars in my collection. So I wanted to showcase it here. We're doing Throwback Diecast Thursdays here over on JTN2. If you saw us from TikTok, welcome. And yeah, let's get right into this review. We always look at the boxes here, and these boxes for the, early 2010s were all very similar. You, of course, have a rendering of the diecast, this generic NASCAR, Penske 12, Penske Racing, the old Penske Racing logo. The year on the end of the box, which is something they've always done. It's Brad Keselowski, number 12 Dodge, 2010 Charger, 648 of these made. This car, remember I told you, probably got it for $35, $40 back in 2010, and is now a car that goes for quite a bit more than that on eBay and other diecast trading sites. So again, very proud. And then the back of the box still having the old rendering. Remember, 2010 was the year where the first 5 races they used the wing, and then they went back to the spoiler, partially due to fans and partially due to it making more sense at that point in the game. But what you're really here for is this unique diecast car. Of course, this was a scheme Brad drove a couple times. Most notably, this is the same paint scheme that he drove at Atlanta, although that was a race where this car had the wing, so this is not like the same car, I guess. These cars, too, because 2011 they got rid of them, but they have the splitter braces on the front. That was a big detail, and those are known to break on these diecast cars. So they have a chip there in the center. That's disappointing. But you got Charger and Dodge with the Dodge Charger headlights, Mobile One, the new Dodge FCA logo with the racing stripes. We move over to the side of the car. It's just a simple design. Like, this one doesn't have a lot for me to go over design-wise, but your Sprint Cup logo, Coors Light, Mobile One, Tissot watches, timepieces. I don't know how you want to call it. You got Mopar, PPG, Bosch, Snap-on, Mazak, and Lennox on the B-post. Of course, your Dodge logo on the side, Discount Tire and Avis. Discount Tire, of course, this was the year they came on with Team Penske. Of course, 2010 was the year Keselowski won the Nationwide Series title in that 22 Team Penske Discount Tire car that has become so famous. 2 drivers have won drivers' titles in that 22 for Penske, and most recently, of course, Austin Cindric. On the back, you got to have the Mopar somewhere if it's a car sponsored by Dodge. GoPenske.com there on the bottom, and Dodge there with the 12 on the stickers on the taillights. Another interesting detail, maybe if you're newer to NASCAR, newer to diecast collecting, pre-next gen, this was a big sticking point for manufacturers, actually, was the fact that teams would put team logos and numbers over the headlights and taillights. As you can see, there's the 12 there on the left front headlight. Team Penske has always not put the Team Penske logo on their cars, oddly enough, so that's always a cool note about the Team Penske cars, that if you collect them or maybe you like them. Also, I forgot to mention, this is the RT model. They have the RT badging on these Chargers. But when Next Gen came around, a big sticking point for the manufacturers was, hey, we don't want you to put logos on our headlights because that's part of our brand identity. And, of course, the team's obliged to that. We all know that. So then they started putting it right here on the bumper, right below the headlights. It works a little bit better on the next-gen cars. It would work okay here, but remember, contingencies used to be all the way up here. Penske is an outlier with those contingencies, usually had less than most other teams. This car, of course, roof flaps open at the 12 on the hood, or roof, rather. The trunk opens on these older cars, too, when they're the Action. I believe this is technically Gold Series. Platinum Series is a Platinum Series. Gold Series is the 164s. But it's hard to see in there. It's kind of dark, but you got all your gas tank and stuff. This is DIN 604, 504. I'm awful today at reading. Let's see if we can't open this bad boy up. Always the most cringy part of any diecast review. You can use your pinky and then kind of turn the tires. Make sure we don't overextend the hood on the hinges and break them so the hood doesn't stay flush. Got Dodge there underneath the hood. It's another common thing teams do. Put decals, stickers, if they had Mobil 1 at this time, maybe a Mobil 1 sticker would be there too. And of course you got the detailed engine. These old Action cars, if you're ever, at the racetrack, flea markets, these cars I always like them. If you can get these kind of COT era, or even some of the early next-gen cars with a lot more of the detail than of what we had since the pandemic started. And since, Lionel's kind of taken over, some of the quality things have gone down. I don't know the intricacies of it, so I don't want to make a comment on it that way. But, of course, these Platinum Series cars no longer have the working deck lids up. I believe they still have the roof flaps, although I could be wrong there. I'd have to go look at one of my reviews on here, or some of the cars I have from last year, like the Eric Jones Tide car that we got up here on the channel. But nonetheless, a really cool diecast. I know a lot of Brad Keselowski fans. This is one, if you're trying to collect them all, this is a hard one to get. Of course, we talked about it. 648 is a very limited run on diecast cars. It's usually kind of your minimum number that I've seen. I think sometimes there's 400s of the normal, basic, not talking about special finishes, which always have a lower run on those because they can make more money off of those. But these, of course, they have to make a certain number to be able to make decent profit, or what they want for profits. That's why you always see do not produce things go, or did not produce, or won't produce, or whatever you want to call it. DNP alerts going out. But nonetheless, a really cool Brad Keselowski car. Remember, you can go to our friends at CircleBDiecast.com. Maybe you have this one and you're trying to finish your Brad Keselowski collection. Of course, this year, him moving over to RFK. You got to get some 6 diecast now, which is half of 12. So now, you can do 12 divided by 2 is equal to 6. Pretty cool numbers right there, 12 divided by 2 is 6. But nonetheless, folks, cannot thank you enough for tuning in and watching this review, if you want to call it that, or overview is probably a better word, of this 2010 Brad Keselowski Dodge Charger they drove for Team Penske in his first season there. It's so cool to see the progression of the cars that Brad drove. Of course, going back to the story I told at the beginning, when I got this car, it was after he was announced for the 2, so that was probably, why it was on clearance, but nonetheless, of course, a really cool car. As always, folks, really appreciate it if you hit that like button, subscribe. We got more great content here on JTN2. I'd appreciate you looking at that. Giving it a little peruse through it if maybe you're bored here on a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, whatever day of the week you're watching. And as always, cannot thank you enough for tuning in. I've been Joe here for JTN2, and we'll see you guys in the next video.